And I don't know who was playing who, but
Stop right there. Sorry, what more do you need to know?
and I'm sitting there going, ball in hand, you know, and I wasn't playing, I was watching. Ball in hand, and of course I had a whole different vision of what that might be. It wasn't very nice.
Good morning, D. Do you hear me?
Can't think of his name. It's a comedian, Ron, something. No, it would be the other.
Nah, it doesn't look like you're on mute. I'm not hearing you at all.
I could never hear. You could never
Follow
hear.
it. It's like Jeff Foxley. You might be a redneck if you stare at the orange juice cart.
Okay, there. Are you hearing us now, D? I'm still not hearing you yet.
Hey, Darren.
Hi, Chris. How are you?
I'm good. I'm just going to mute myself.
Okay, well, I don't have your video, so you must not have your video on either.
No, I don't have it on yet. I'll do it when we start my part.
Yeah, not a problem.
Okay, I'm on.
Okay.
Can you hear?
Dee's got everything going now. So let me get turned around here for the beginning of the meeting.
Morning.
Hey, good morning, Chris. Good morning, Dee. All right. Brett, he's on. I was wanting to talk to Brett too.
Yeah, but it sounded like.
Yeah, it does when people are coming in. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right, we got our recorder sitting in here with us, so the auditor's office is here with us. So we'll get our meeting underway this morning. I'd like to call this meeting of the Jefferson County Board of Supervisors to order. First thing I would like to start with this morning is I would like to express the sympathy of the board to former Supervisor Dick Reed and his family for the loss of their son, Chris, and take just a moment of silence to acknowledge that, if we would, please. All right, thank you very much, everyone. We're deeply saddened by that news, and we wish the family well. All right, can I have a motion to approve, acknowledge the minutes of our previous meeting? I have a motion from Dimmitt, and second from Sandquist. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We're going to meet with Sandy Stever, talking about some mental health issues that we have and some stuff that may be coming up. I'm not sure. So, Sandy?
Hi. So I'll start with the easy stuff, which is I went a couple months ago and took a tour of the Loudon's building, which I think it's called, I had it on silent. I really did. But anyway, and I got a tour, and they weren't done yet. I don't think they're done now for the new apartment complex for affordable housing. But I saw that they had advertised, so I actually called the number. And what I viewed when I went to tour was wonderful. And the lady that answered the phone was very nice. So I'm very excited about this and hope it really does open up and expand housing for our low income and disabled individuals. So let's see, let's start with the regions have been allocated the CARES Act dollars, which will be the federal relief money coming from the federal government for COVID needs. So each of the regions will have that money for that. The SEAL region, this amounts to roughly $1.5 million. And no, they haven't sent the rules attaching you know, how that you disperse that or what you do with that or how you get that out. I only know for sure it has to do with COVID relief for mental health needs. And we don't know anything about that yet. So it won't be for our regular programming.
Speaking a little bit about CARES, all of the department heads have been asked to make a list of what their expenses were involved with getting their offices ready for reopening through this time period, and any expenses that our people have, we need to itemize those out so that we can get reimbursed through this same CARES Act for expenses in their offices. So there was an email sent out by Chauncey Molding last week describing that a little bit. So please follow along with that and take care of it as it comes up for each department. So,
Darren,
yes.
do people need to have receipts for that?
Yes, they do.
Would we, excuse me, Melissa, would we have receipts on file where they submitted claims for those?
Yeah, and they were instructed to label those as they've been turning them in. I've labeled them under code 19.
Right.
So if I need to, I can just run a report and get all the code 19 things.
All right.
What'd she say? Darren, I'm sorry.
Those receipts were asked to go through the auditor's office, and they have set up a line item, a code 19 item, so that they could keep track of them, and Melissa can generate reports based off of requests from that particular line item. So I think we're pretty well in hand right now. We just need to follow up and make sure that we've done all our due diligence for the paperwork that we need completed. So,
With the specific dates on it, if people look at that document, there's specific dates that you can only expend right now with this first go around of money.
okay. All right. Thank you, Chris. So Sandy, sorry for the interruption.
No,
I
it's
just
fine.
wanted to
It's
make sure
important.
that we had that out there.
So, you know, as you guys know, or should know, the last couple of years have been a lot of mandates coming down. And so one of those has been for access centers. And that's been confusing because when you hear the word center, you think of a building, board and mortar structure and something going on inside, but it's virtual access centers. So as long as you have all the parts available, you've met the requirements. We actually have the parts available, which are having crisis assessments completed, which we've had that since the region started. We've had our crisis assessments. We have crisis stabilization residential is a requirement, which we always known and we have, which is was our Tenco house. Now I guess it's a First Resources house because they merged. In case you haven't heard that, they've merged. And the third component was to have subacute available, which is individuals not needing inpatient, but they need the next step below, which would involve having a nurse on the unit. And we have subacute. We contracted for our region with Southern Iowa Mental Health in Ottumwa. They have 3 beds. And so that's good. And the only other thing I put down to even mention was that in regards to those things, we're proposing a contract with SIAC to drive those non-commitment people. You know, right now they drive the committals. If the sheriff calls them, they'll go pick up people and drive them across the state to psychiatric inpatients care, but it would be a contract for people that's coming out of those inpatient care settings, acute settings, and going to subacute, you know, which is your step down. Not everybody needs subacute. It's just those that do. There's only 3 beds. It's not like it's going to be readily available for just anybody and everybody. And the 3 beds is it's for use statewide. It's not just this region. You know, it's anybody that wants to access it. So, So we're proposing a contract with SIAC to do those types of transports for us.
Okay.
Any questions?
Got a couple, funding, any new funding information in the region to implement all of these or continue to implement all of these required services?
No.
I think I need the answer.
That's the short answer.
Well, that's fine.
No, there's no new funding.
First Resources and Timco, we lost, and I don't know which one took over which.
Actually, I said that as well. Neither took over, they merged.
Okay.
But they're using the First Resources name because they had to use a name. And so they decided to use that name for 6 months. So supposedly by January 1st, they're going to have a brand new name so that it's quite clear that nobody took over anybody, that it was a complete merger. I don't know. I'm sure there's an inside story that we don't know.
That's probably true. I know that 215 Transit, I talked to the other day. They have dropped, they being Timco or First Resources, whichever, dropped some ridership.
Big to Timco because their provider numbers shouldn't be working now. They should be accessed all through the provider number of First Resources.
All right.
Okay, nothing else? Well, thank you, Sandy, for coming and giving us an update. Dee, you didn't have any questions?
No, I don't. Thanks, Sandy.
You're welcome.
All right, bye now. All right, we'll move on to meet with the county engineer, Scott Klein. Good morning, Scott.
Good morning. On top, so got a message from Adrian Dickey, who's expressed his appreciation about the paving projects.
Ah,
He mentions the road crew because he sent it to us, but everybody that was involved, I'm sure he's very appreciative of that and their company.
well, thank you, David Dickey. Adrian Dickey?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Is the
Dave
one-
was the one I worked with for so many years
Yeah.
at DOT. Sorry.
Adrian's just the one that signed.
Well, thank you, Adrian Dickey. We appreciate the thank you.
So it's been a couple weeks. Last week, the crew moved equipment to a box culvert replacement on the Henry Jefferson county line. And this past week, I mean, two weeks ago they did that. This past week they worked on it. Had it open by Thursday. And so I had to tear out the old one, which was only about, I don't know, 7 feet from the stream bed to the top of the deck. And there's quite a drop there. So we took just the deck off of the old one, left the wing walls in place, and then put about a 9-foot, 1-inch diameter by 50-foot tanker car in place, and then raised the road grade about 3 feet. And so anyway, and then we had to put rock on the new dirt, and they also put rock on the rest of that road, about a mile, from 250th to 240th, and there's a couple property owners there at the end of that. So, Jefferson County is the county that takes care of that section of County Line Road, and Henry County took care of some other sections. But they contributed to the cost of essentially splitting the cost
Cost of the work.
on the old code replacement. So we've also started, well, I've been doing touch-up work, like hand work on stop bars and river crossing, striping and things like that. And now they're essentially doing striping, painting of the roads with the striper. So like edge lines and center lines. They did some ditching for a couple of weeks on Maryville Boulevard and maybe some other places in District 6. Did blading of gravel roads, and they started blading for dust control for the second application of dust control that the commercial providers are going to be doing. And that's mostly what the crews are working on.
Okay.
I talked to Brent last week. I got a call from Jim Eakins, and was concerned that we put new rock down on Brookville, because we're very, very pleased with our dust proofing and stuff. So I talked to Brent, and the plan is to go back out and do the second round of dust proofing in the places where we're at, but they're reconditioning the roads was the way that Brent put it. So I called him back to let him know what was going on. Osage, Glasgow, corner of Osage and Glasgow. We had a new home built in there on that corner. I don't know if you're aware of that or not. Occasion to spend my weekend out there, as I was camping at Grand Prairie, so going back and forth. And it's impossible to see the oncoming traffic when you're at the stop sign in the east, because overgrowth around the utility pole and growth in the ditches.
No, we need to mow there.
And, I don't know who's responsible for around the utility pole, whether it's the property owner, whether it's us, but
The utility pole should be in the right of way.
Well, there's the utilities are on the other side of the road, really. So on other sides of both of those roads. So the only utility going to that house is the service line.
Okay.
The service line can be anywhere.
Yeah, a pole carrying it, you mean?
Yeah, the service.
Okay.
So, but they probably won't mind if we mow on that too.
No.
While we're out there.
They wouldn't mind.
and I don't know whether there'll be more traffic out there or not. I know the county's building Jones Hickory Hills, and so working with that. Scott and I have been talking, Kelly and I have been talking, and maybe visit out to So Fair Farms. I don't know if Pat's on the line or not.
Yeah, Pat is with us.
I would like to visit with you, or I would like to visit with you and Scott, see about, I realize we need to recodify our ordinances, but I think we need to look at this subdivision ordinance sooner than later. Michael was looking into some things for us, but things have gotten out of hand at So Fair Farms, and we've got kind of a similar situation to getting it. Is it Kale, Scott? Kale or Kale?
Well, I haven't been out there, but there were, it's on Cato. It's where recently a new subdivision was instituted where it had to have a grant for less than an acre. And I think it's on the neighboring property. There's some 4 different buildings that had to have special permits to be moved out of there. But I don't know the purpose of the building. It's just on the radar as far as
So
what
I
they do.
reached out to Dan. Is Chris still on the line? I know this is actually under her umbrella. But I've reached out to Dan and I've asked Dan not to issue any more permits out at So Fair Farms until they come to us first. So we can have a conversation, so we at least know what's going on out there until such time as we can get that changed. We've got 5 properties in a 1.8 acre area. The most recent one is just had a sand filter, small sand filter installed. It's some kind of co-op, so I don't know what all of that is that's involved. I went with Kelly to see if there was any recorded documents other than some sale of lot 4, I think it was. There really isn't anything recorded there. So,
And these are tiny homes that you're talking about, aren't you?
they're 1-bedroom homes, is the way they're listed. This last one that went in it's actually a stick-built home. It's not on wheels, but there are some out there that are on wheels. I also talked to Steve about this. The question is whether or not, is it a campground? Is it a mobile home park? Is it a commercial entity? You know, because that changes the tax. And the thing is that they split the taxes. The thing that concerns me is that this is going on, and no disrespect to anybody, and nothing about Dan. It's just the fact is that we as a board don't realize we've got probably 15 buildings out there on that property now. Not all of them homes,
Right.
but we've got a public bathhouse. Subdivision ordinance specifically prohibits public improvements in a minor subdivision. Is that a public improvement? But we don't know about these things till after the fact.
Right, right.
So,
And that would be, so Pat McVan, what is your thought of changing our subdivision ordinance to include tiny homes and how that they would work in a subdivision that currently has lots of 1 acre or larger in them? Pat, are you there? Yep.
Yeah, you cut out on your question, so I didn't get the question.
Oh, sorry. I was wondering, should we go ahead and start looking at, well, the future of tiny home subdivisions or tiny homes being built on a 1 acre lot in an existing subdivision, and whether that can be handled as a co-op or whether those items need to be done on a case-by-case basis, or if we would not allow something like that to go on as far as the county is concerned. I know that some of this would involve zoning, which we don't have, but would our subdivision ordinance be able to handle something like this, or would there need to be a major overhaul of it?
Well, I don't think that we would need a major overhaul, but we would need to be clear in terms of what it is that we're trying to do. You know, if we're going to start designating, you know, building sizes and how that's going to impact, I mean, that's more zoning or you know, building code type things. You know, there's a number of properties out in the county where people will have a home and then they'll, you know, build a second home, or they'll move in a trailer and they'll have a relative or something there. That's not anything that we've regulated. I know Mike and I have been talking about this a little bit. You know, his question to me, and a fair question, and we've talked about it, is what's the difference between this or building a 5 or 6 unit apartment building? If someone were going to build a 5 or 6 unit apartment building, I think that would be celebrated. So we need some guidance in terms of what exactly it is that we want to prevent or to have some say-so in before we can decide how it might fit within the subdivision ordinance.
Okay.
Hey, Pat. Oh. Pat, Mike Brown here. I couldn't get my my microphone to work on my laptop. So Pat and I talked a little bit about this last week too. I don't know if you mentioned that. So, you know, again, I think it's basically a policy decision that you have to make, determining how and when, in the manner that you're going to structure or somehow regulate what's going on there. So that, you know, I don't know, Pat mentioned this too, and I walk over here, like Joe over here. That, you know, it could be something similar to a condominium. And you're gonna have the same group of people using one septic system, but everything's got to comply with what the rules and regs are as far as the waste.
Right, and I liked Pat's comment that, yes, if it was a 5 house apartment building that was being built, we would probably be celebrating or holding that up as an example of what could be done out there. But this is an entirely different situation where these individuals can bring in a home and set it down there and live out of it. And if for some reason they move away in the future, they don't necessarily leave that there, they'll pull it out and somebody else may put another one in there. So is that a trailer park? Is that some other designation of what's going on? And again, you've got 5 or 6 separate units out there. If they sell that unit off to someone, how is that sale transaction recorded in the assessor's office? And those are things that I think that we need to look at. But I know you had another question, Lee.
Well, I do, Pat, and I'll follow up with, and Darren just touched on it, and so did Michael. But in regards to your analogy with the 5-room or the 5 unit condominium or apartment or whatever, and Michael touched on it, by code, you can have 4 homes on one system. But the system is comprised of several components, and it would be the same thing here with your apartment complex. The size of that system, as you indicated, would be determined by sanitary and by Chapter 69 of the Iowa Code. I'm not concerned about that as much as I am in our subdivision ordinance, and I don't know if we just need to surgically remove that and expand it, but in our subdivision ordinance, we have indicated that you have to have a minimum of 1 acre to build a home, unless we grant a variance. So now we have on 1.8 acres, 5 homes. How do I tell John Doe, you can't build a home and put a septic system in there on less than 1 acre without us granting a variance somewhere down the road, just because they're not in a subdivision? The purpose behind the 1 acre was to be able to make sure that there was enough area to provide for the installation of a septic system. The code 69, and I know Dan will disagree with me on this, but it's true. Code Chapter 69 does not give you the authority to bypass all of the other systems to get to a smaller system. The idea behind it is the state of Iowa wants a subsurface discharge system, but our area does not accommodate that. So their next preferred system is the 720 square foot sand filter system. And because of that was one of the reasons we established the 1 acre as a minimum requirement. If there are extenuating circumstances and you deal with this in zoning, we can grant them a variance because there are systems that are available that will fit within a smaller area. But as a rule, we don't want to go there.
Well, isn't that the purpose then of creating a subsection or something that deals with tiny homes?
I agree.
Yeah, that would of course define what that is, define how that's going to fit into the rest of the system as far as the subdivision.
And I don't know if it's something as simple as saying that the minimum 1 acre applies to all, and I don't know the legal language or how it should look, but so it doesn't matter if Scott Klein bought an acre of land, it doesn't trigger a minor subdivision. The way I understand it, if you buy a plot of ground and you're going to build a house on it, it has to be 1 acre. That was our intent when we did that. It may not say that correctly in the subdivision ordinance, but that certainly was the board's intent.
Was there some intent there if it came to apartment buildings or condominiums that would be built out in the country? You have 1 acre, can you not build a condominium out there with 6 units or 10 units?
No, at the time, the honest answer to that question is no, there was no contemplation given to that, because at the time,
the board was more concerned about the minimum 1 acre and the CSR rating on the land where subdivisions were being created. It was more about subdivisions than it was building, generally speaking. And then when you have situations and all, and I'm not finding fault here, but like with Books Are Fun, where they're saying, okay, there's a whole scenario where the DNR gets involved in that if it exceeds a certain waste disposal capacity need. And then it's taken out of the local sanitarian's hands. And don't misunderstand, Steve, I'm not as concerned about how it should be assessed as I am the 1 acre issue and whether or not, and then we don't know, as I indicated, we don't know what's going on out there. And that's not to find fault with anybody or to think that they're, but the fact of the matter is that that was the purpose. I talked to Steve about, we're going to have to redefine what a CSR rating is, because when we implemented 55 CSR, the formula to determine that was a whole lot different than what it is now. So there's a couple of things in that subdivision ordinance that.
Oh, another point, condominium tend to be something where you own part of a building, and then apartments would be some, a landlord owns the building and you have apartments, so probably have to make a distinction there. Because, I don't know, might have to.
And here's the way I would look at it, Michael, and Pat, if you can hear me. The minimum 1 acre, so if you're going to go build a 15-unit apartment house, I'm not sure that with everything else you'd have to put in there, the 1 acre would accommodate it. Right, okay. But we're saying a minimum of 1 acre. There isn't any, I mean, you can do it on 10 acres, but we're looking at it, and I don't know, I'm going to defer to our brilliant legal minds, because I don't know how it's supposed to look. I'm just wondering if we can, like I say, surgically remove the minimum 1 acre and expand it so it's any building site has to be a minimum of 1 acre.
Yeah, I think that's easy enough, Lee, because you mentioned that the ordinance says that, you have to have 1 acre for each building or each home. And actually it doesn't say that. It says each lot has to be 1 acre.
Right.
So we didn't really contemplate multiple residences. And so I think we have to be careful about how we label it, because you don't just want to say buildings, because somebody can have, outbuildings or garages or whatever.
Or public bathhouses.
I mean, we can, I think we can take a look at it. Obviously, if we need to look at the CSR again, we can take a look at that, and we can amend it. It wouldn't be terribly difficult. We would, sounds like we would want these, all these provisions to apply not only to the general subdivisions, but also to the minor or simple subdivisions. And I think we can do that fairly easily. If we basically have to add a definition of residence or habitable building or something of that effect, and include it in the restrictions when we're talking about lot size.
Another thing we have is in a quarter section, they can make a first split, and then that doesn't trigger the ordinance. But we have some people that want to make that split be a half acre, and since it doesn't trigger ordinance, I can't say anything about that. I just advise people it'd be better if they had an acre. And a lot of people see the wisdom in doing that and do it. So, might have to have something where, as long as they have a simple split and it's at least an acre, if they're going to develop on it, then that would not trigger the ordinance. But if they're going to have something less than an acre, maybe that we'd have to say that triggers the ordinance because of the sanitation aspect.
And I just, like I said, these folks that are moving in those houses or building little one-bedroom homes. I'm perfectly fine with that. I don't particularly have a problem with that. It's just that as it's currently constituted, we have no idea what's going on where. And it can, I think, can get out of hand fairly quickly if we don't, I don't want to say control it, I don't like that word, but at least have some regulation, some element of jurisdiction over what's going on.
Hey, Lee, can you hear me?
Yeah.
This is Brett Farrell.
Yeah.
Hey, on a kind of a smaller point to that is what I'm running into. It is making it hard to assign 911 address incorrectly at these places because, to put it, if someone builds a house on a parcel number or somewhere, I can GIS that pretty easy because the driveway's there. I know exactly. And I've been going, trying the best to plot some of these places for 911 address. And it's basically just handwriting a map and trying to figure out, you put 3 buildings on the site and call them, the same address, but do you label them A, B, C or A, B, C, D? And so my concern is emergency services getting there to some of these places and the correct address and not wasting time. And it's been a struggle to get some of these mapped out without it having a subdivision name or a road name to them. You either got to post signs out at the road and then take a guess on where you're going when you get up there, or everybody's got to label their house number. So there's a lot of other, things that I worry about when it comes to emergency services getting to the right place out there.
Absolutely. And this one only has the one address. And I do know that according to their website, if they don't already, they're planning 5 concrete pads for people to move in on. I mean, there's some significant types of development going on there. And Brett's right. We can send them to 2385. Okay.
Yeah.
We're kind of a similar situation, and we've already talked about that too, out at that Kale place where there's not really a street name, and there's multiple residences and buildings out there now on a driveway. How do you send somebody out there to get the right house in case you have to send an ambulance?
Situation, seconds matter. So, that's, and I know that people are going to resist this. And the idea is, in the long run, it really is to protect the county, so the taxpayers at large, so we know what's going on. And then, as Brett brought up, and you just brought up, how do you know where you're going? It's the same question we had when Vedic City, again, no disrespect to Vedic City. When you change the name of a street and then it changes back on the other end, it's difficult for our emergency responders to be able to know where exactly they're supposed to go. So
I still have people that live in the street, part of the street that was changed, but they haven't changed. They still call it the other, the old street name.
on a similar note, right there in that same location, Scott, we have, I think it's 240th and I think Eucalyptus. But it looks like they go back into private drives, are all overgrown and everything, but they actually have street names on them. We certainly aren't maintaining them. I'm wondering if we need to, Pat, vacate those to those property owners or something. They don't look like they're through streets. I didn't drive down because they just look like little lanes, but there's street signs there.
Well, and they should be blue street signs because they're subdivision roads, and I believe Brett would probably know. They probably got those names and in their system so that they can find them. I get requests sometimes about one of those streets, and I say, well, I don't even know where that is. Can you give me the approximation? And I can find it on the GIS most of the time. But
well, it does show up there because when I looked at them, but I didn't know whether. Clearly, we were not maintaining them, and you're right, they are blue signs.
Hey, Darren, Lee,
Yeah.
I'm wondering if we should do a road tour maybe next Monday after our meeting so we all can go look at this and then have a work session on it.
For me.
That would be a good idea. So why don't we do that, set up a road tour after our regular board meeting coming up next Monday. So we'll put that on the schedule to do that. So, all right, moving on, we are going to discuss and consider a resolution naming depositories. We have the Office of Treasurer is going to have First National Bank, Iowa State Bank, Libertyville Savings Bank, Midwest One, Pilot Grove Savings Bank. The recorder will have First National Bank, and the auditor for a checking account is going to have First National Bank. Each of those have separate different maximum deposits in effect under prior resolutions, and they'll be moving to a maximum deposit in effect under this current resolution. And those amounts will go from $8.5 million to $10 million on all of the treasurer's accounts that are listed. The recorder's account will go from $50,000 to $100,000. The auditor's checking will go from $1 million to $7.5 million. So I would accept a motion to approve the resolution of naming new depositories. Motion from Dimmitt, a second from Sandquist. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. You'll need to come in and sign these when you have a time to do that.
I should be back Wednesday.
Okay. All right.
Before you move on, I just thought I'd mention to the board that we had an application from Windstream, and they're gonna replace some antennae on like 3 towers. And I told them they need, even though they weren't gonna be doing any digging in the right of way, they're gonna have vehicles in the right of way. And I've in the past had a complaint about, in Windstream, that it was about, but vehicles working in the right of way and leaving ruts on a place where somebody mows. And so I told them they do need to have a permit. Yeah, so that all the stipulations that we have with the permit would be there to be enforceable. But otherwise, yeah, they're not really supposed to be damaging or digging anything up. But that's a permit to be signed at some point.
Okay. All right, thank you, Scott. Let's see, we'll move on to item number, well, we don't have an item number on this, but allow and disallow homestead, military, and BPTC as recommended by the assessor. Can you explain a little bit about this, Scott or Steve?
So what we have this morning is our annual allowance and disallowance of credits, property tax credits, for various reasons. Some people have moved but still own the property, so they're no longer eligible for it. So we recommend a disallowance for those. Some are because it has changed ownership. New deeds have not been filed yet, so they haven't changed ownership yet, so it makes them not eligible. And it's just anyone who hasn't acknowledged when we've sent them a letter that they should send back stating that they acknowledge that it is disallowed. So the first batch here is the homesteads and militaries. I'll need Darren to sign those two. And then the other is the business property tax credits, and these are all new ones. And they're mostly just because properties have changed hands. So I'll need those signed too, and then you just need to,
Do we need to take action on that?
you just need to make a motion and approve.
I'll make a motion to approve it.
Okay, I have a motion from Sandquist, a second from Dimmitt.
Yes.
All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right, I'll work my way through this morning yet. There's quite a stack.
Bring them up when you're done, it's fine.
Okay. All righty. Let's discuss and consider proposed Fairfield annexation along Libertyville Road. Kelly, you can explain a little bit about this to us, if you would, please. Is this, this is our, either we approve, we just don't have any opinion one way or another, or we disapprove of what's going on with this annexation.
Correct. We just need a resolution from Jefferson County approving the annexation from county property to city property, because the way Chauncey explained it to me is that now the taxation is going to be the same, but the city will be getting it now. That's why it's required to have a resolution from the board, and it will be attached to, this is the actual annexation from the city. So we just need to attach the resolution on the back to make it, I guess, legitimate on here. He gave me the code section for that in the cities, and I'm probably not going to take the time to read it, but it does say that a copy of the resolution shall take the plan into account when considering, and a copy of the resolution shall be immediately filed with the annexing city and shall be considered by the city council when taking action, and they shall forward a copy of the resolution to the city development board as part of city proceedings on the annexation. So what they're going to be doing is just adding this to it, just so that everybody has approved it in one way or another. We have no recourse on that one.
I would like to enter into the record, I did respond to this young lady this morning, but just pretty much generic. And was Pat still on? Her name is Janine Patton, Jain. She said that she had heard this morning that this was on our agenda. She's in the process of purchasing the property at 2044 Libertyville Road. Closing scheduled for the end of August. I don't know where that is along Libertyville Road. So I'm not familiar with the process of annexation, but I'm wondering if input from the landowner has any bearing on the outcome. Property has city sewer, but no other city services. I would prefer to continue as is and not have my property annexed into the city. Basically, I said it was pretty much out of our control, but.
Well, and all properties out there have city water and city sewer now available to them. The impetus for annexation was based off of putting in a new sewer line out there on both sides of the roadway so that people can have access to that sewer line once their septic systems have failed. If she's in the process of buying this from another person, at this time, that other person had already signed an agreement so that if that property became attached to the city sewer at the time their septic system failed, they were to voluntarily annex into the city of Fairfield. So you'll need to do some research with property title when it comes to what that previous property owner had done, or if they had already connected to the sanitary sewer out there. So that would be something they would have to take up with their attorneys, number one, and number two, with the city of Fairfield.
I was saying in my email, which I emailed you indeed, I requested or recommended that she contact Aaron at City Hall, gave her City Hall's number, but I just wanted to bring this.
All right.
Yeah, so Chauncey and I talked about this or last week as well. I I agree with Kelly, the language that that she read. But further beyond that, it does say that, you know, failure of the supervisors to do a resolution will not delay the process. And essentially, in practice, what that means is that if the board does not do a resolution, that's essentially them taking no position. So we don't need to, in my opinion, we don't need to do a resolution if we're taking no opinion. I guess, I don't know, frustration in these annexations is that I believe that the county is required to get notice from the city in order to, you know, put this on the agenda and make an informed decision. In the past, my experience has been that typically we have no opinion, but the notice, over the 20 years that I've been here, the notice has been sporadic at best. I feel like we, you know, you follow the newspaper and you follow the city council's agenda, you figure out that something's going on, but we don't necessarily get the notices that we maybe should be. So my comment on these all the time is that I just want to make sure that whatever annexation is taking place is not creating any additional islands of county property surrounded by city property.
Correct.
That's if there's going to be any type of objection to the annexation, it would have to be, you know, based on the law in terms of the factors that are determined by the City Development Board. That is one of them. If you know, there's other concerns, we can obviously talk about those. But I would say that unless the board wants to strongly support or object, I don't think that you need to do a resolution.
All right.
Should we, or will you, or have you, or how do we do this? Should we send out a letter then to City Hall to pertinent individuals there that, hey, over the years, we've been kind of lax on this process and we need to get back on track so that it's, so that the process is completed according to law?
I don't think that would hurt. I mean, it's just, you know, indicate that this was on your agenda today and that, you know, in the future, because I don't know why this is on the agenda. I think it's on the agenda because of the communication that the city's had with Kelly's office, not because that there was any formal notice that was received. So, you know, just point that out and say, hey, you know, get us the notice on these so that, you know, we can take a look at them. The ones that we have received notice on in the past, I know there's usually like a map that comes along with it so you can check out the island issues and some of those other types of things. I don't know if those were, if we have those or not. So just that kind of stuff.
Pat, can I say something?
Yeah.
Chauncey and I, actually Chauncey went into the city's chapters and codes, and this is chapter 368 of the city development.
Yeah, I'm looking at it.
368.7, the voluntary annexation of territory, and you go down to paragraph B1, it says, the annexing city shall provide written notice to the Board of Supervisors and Township Trustees of each county and township that contains all or a portion of the territory to be annexed. The written notice shall include the same information required in paragraph C and shall set a time for consultation on the proposed annexation between the annexing city and each county and township that contains all or portion of the territory to be annexed. I'm not going to go ahead and go on for that one, but it also says the consultation shall be held at least 14 business days before the application in paragraph C are mailed. So there is, I mean, this is coming right out of their city rules. So they're just, you know, we've just let them go by this and not really take a hard look at it, but that's what it says in their city development. section here. So, and I do have annexation right here, and I do have the plats of survey, but it wouldn't hurt for, you know, them to send this over and a copy of their plat of survey and what they are annexing, so we can actually see that it's not creating an island or, you know, some type of closed off property that, you know, we don't have a roadway to for the county.
Well, I wonder, and I agree with Kelly and I agree with you, Pat, but I wonder if, it's not that you don't already have enough to do, but I can look at this stuff and not be able to, now maybe you can because you've been an engineer, but I can look at this and not know squat. Okay, I mean, so it's the southeast corner, the northeast, west side of the, you know, and I have no clue what I'm looking at. Maybe a picture's worth 1,000 words, I'm not even sure that would help me. But it would seem to me that this information should be coming from Melanie to you, and you would have, and you've been real big on this, trying to, and so you trying to erase some of these islands that we have here. You would know what you were looking at and then be able to advise us. And I'm wondering if you should be our liaison in that regard.
I don't think you have that option, Lee.
Okay. Well, no, I mean, we would approve it or disapprove it, but being informed would come from the engineer so that we knew what we were looking at or what we were approving or disapproving and any concerns that he might have.
Yeah, the statute says that the notice is provided to the Board of Supervisors, and then you can forward it on to whomever you'd like to get that information. But the notice, as Kelly indicated, also provides for, you know, a couple of weeks to
digest it,
to, you know, figure that stuff out before there's, you know, conversation or any type of resolution or any of that type of stuff. So, you know, Kelly's right. The process just hasn't been real strictly followed here locally. And frankly, I think that is not just a local issue. It's, you know, my editorial comment is that, you know, if we wanted to make a procedural argument about that this, you know, wasn't done and check off the list to the City Development Board, I'm not convinced that the City Development Board would be interested in that type of argument. They're interested in moving the process along. So, you know, the process is as good as the enforcement of the process, and we don't get to enforce the process. That's the City Development Board. But what we can do is try to improve the relationship with the city so that at least we're getting notice and we have the opportunity to you know, evaluate and make a comment if it is appropriate or necessary.
Okay. All right. We'll move on to an item here, discuss entrances into the courthouse while tuck pointing is being done. Right now, the process is being done on the north and east sides of the buildings so that we can get the parking lots reopened to have more accessibility to the north side of the building. Currently, the entrance to the south side of the building is our primary entrance. Our employees are able to use the north entrance to come in and out because they have a key to that doorway. But we're asking the public to try to limit their comings and goings to this building from the south side until we're done with that work on the north side. They're moving along as quickly as they can. They're striking the joints on all the sandstone portion of this building right now, and they will work across both the north and east sides. Once those are completed with the material back in the joints, then they will start on the west and south sides of the building. The work being primarily done right now is, again, so that we can get both of the parking lots reopened and more of a normal traffic flow back to the building from both the north and south sides. But again, during the time period that you see equipment working on both the north and east sides, please use the south entrance to the courthouse. The courthouse is open and doing business as they have. We reopened back in last May, again, to full access. We also want to try to have both entrances open and operational as much as possible during voting that's going to come out, because we'll have early voting going on here in the courthouse starting sometime around October 1st, I believe, is when this voting period begins. October 5th, okay. So I wasn't too far off, but thank you, Melissa, for correcting me on that. October 5th, you will be able to vote in person in the lobby here at the courthouse for the upcoming November election. So we still have applications that can be made for absentee voting going on right now in the auditor's office, and you can request that to be sent out to you. And then need to fill it out properly and return it to the auditor's office. And as soon as ballots become available for mail-in voting, they will be sent to your homes after the requests have been made. So that's kind of where we're at with tuck pointing. We're now into our second week of this project. And again, this project is predicted to last until mid-October at this point in time. So thank you to the public for your patience with this, and please again use the south entrance as the primary entrance to the courthouse. Yes. The Dropbox is still available all the time, 24/7 on the north side of the building. Working hours for the tuck pointing crew begin usually around 7 during the week and finish after a 10-hour time period, which would put that at about 5 in the afternoon. So again, there is some inconvenience involved with this, but there are ways to be able to get your payments for taxes coming up next month in the Dropbox on the north side of the building, as well as having access to the south entrance of the building to be able to come in and pay in person.
And while they're working, I mean, right now the Dropbox doesn't have any overhead protection like the door does on the north side.
No, but normally the Dropbox would be used not during hours, not during regular business hours, and they are usually finishing up, cleaning up on site shortly after the courthouse closes at 4:30 in the afternoon.
Right, so it's just a good point to probably should try to use the Dropbox while they're out there working.
Right, when they're out there working and it's during regular business hours, it's easy enough to be able to come inside the building and just drop off that envelope that you would slide into that Dropbox. The point that I'm trying to make is that the courthouse is open for business. People can come in and do what they need to do inside the building as they have in the past. It is just an inconvenience right now that we are working on the north side of the building and that the north entrance is only accessible to employees at this time. All right, so we'll move on to discuss and consider application and permit for display of fireworks. We have a request in front of us.
I think Pat just rewrote is wanted to update the fireworks permit. Is that right, Pat?
The question to you, Pat McVan, was this is just wanting to update the forms of application for fireworks. Is that what we're looking at?
Yeah, this actually came to light when Melanie and I were working on the tall structures ordinance. When the change in the fireworks law happened, the language and the type of information for this for a fireworks display that would need to be approved by the board also changed. And so it was a good time to look at the form. Of course, Melanie was interested in making sure that like fire departments, the airport, if it's within a certain distance, those types of things were also notified. So we could include those things, those reasonable requests in this application as well. So we haven't had an application, I think Shannon said, since 2016 or 2017. So this does not happen all that often. It's not something that the fairgrounds has to do, for example, for any of their displays, or that the city fireworks just have to do. It's for those that are out in the county, they are few and far between. But it was time to update the form, and so that's what this does.
And this is only required if it's a large scale display, not if it's someone that's just having a smaller display at their home for family for doing fireworks.
Right. It's the term is in the application. It's commercial fireworks, or I think is what it is. It's the law when it changed broke them down into like consumer fireworks and commercial and different types of displays. So this is only for those professionally done large scale displays.
Okay. Because the application actual name is application and permit for display of display fireworks.
Yeah, display fireworks is the thank you for reading that, because display fireworks is the term in the rewritten law that is references or is defined as those commercial firework displays that require a professional operator and require a permit. So display fireworks is the sort of the key phrase. Those are the only types of displays that require this type of permit.
Okay. All right. So I would accept a motion to approve the new application forms as written and shown to us by the county attorney's office in accordance with the new tall structure ordinance that was passed by the board recently within the last 3 board meetings, I believe it was. So do I have a motion to approve this application form? I have a motion from Dimmitt, second from Sandquist. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
And an aye from Mr. Dimmitt. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right, we'll move right along to discuss and consider resolution authorizing the Iowa COVID-19 Local Government Relief Fund. We spoke a little bit about this earlier and how that funding will come back to the county after we have given receipts for different changes that we've made in the offices with plastic plexiglass screening in front of desks, the different cleaning supplies that have been acquired to make sure that we're at a higher cleanliness standard according to the CDC guidelines. This will apply to any expenses that were incurred for special accommodations that had to have been made during the time that the courthouse was closed, or other city or governmental offices within our auspices were closed, and how we handled and mitigated those. But again, all department heads have been asked to make sure that they have actual receipts for work that was done or supplies that were purchased, and those were submitted to the auditor's office and placed into a specific line item in our budget so we can keep track of this. Melissa Fowler, our accountant in the auditor's office, has been keeping track of these and the receipts, and we should be able to have forms or paperwork being able to be filled out. Chris, Estel, do you have any comment on this?
No, I just wondered, so when you said that, Darren, I'm looking at the dates. So the first set would be initial claims for cost from March 1st through July 31st. So just to clarify, and those are due to be submitted by September 15th. And then we'll have another round. So is Melissa going to, I mean, we have all of our stuff separated out into a different file too. Is Melissa going to redistribute those, or just did everybody have copies of those? She's not going to submit on behalf of the county, correct? That's my question. I mean, or is it easier to do that?
I would think that it would be easier to do that if we had one person that would submit the forms rather than each department doing it on their own. So if you have items that you have purchased or special accommodations that you have made that have had some expense attached to them, that it was a good thing that you've kept track of them on your own, but please get those to Melissa so that we can have the forms done through the auditor's office and we can have an accounting done there. It's good that department heads are also keeping their records to make sure that the paperwork is all copacetic with everything that we submit through. But is that okay with you, Melissa?
And I could send each department their list and they can check to make sure we have all the ones accounted for.
Right. Melissa's here. Let me have her
Sorry.
say that again. She's in the meeting here with us.
Hi, Melissa.
So I can send all the departments their own list and you guys can check to see if I have them all and make sure nothing was missed.
That's awesome. I know I keep track because I have to make copies of everything, because if we have grant funding for emergency preparedness or something else, then I have to have all that documentation too. So that's why we keep copies of stuff here. That would be great. The other question I have is when you're looking at the funding and for salaries, it looks like that they're giving, as a matter of administrative convenience in light of the emergency nature of this program, blah, 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 local governments may presume that 25% of payroll costs for public health employees and 25% of payroll costs for public safety employees are payments for services substantially dedicated to or mitigating to responding to COVID-19. Well, I'm here to tell you, we got a lot more than 25%. So, I'm going to have to be, we'll go through and look at all of our day sheets that we do every day for public health, so we know how much it costs to do business for specific programs, because there's a time there it was 100% of our salaries. So I guess we'll add that up. We'll be working on that and getting that calculated so we can submit that. Does that make sense?
Besides your staff, who all did that include? Like,
What?
Brett Farrell?
Would that include like Brett Farrell and the Sheriff's Department and that type of services? Also maybe mental health department, anything that they did as well for the salary portion, Chris? Is that how you're reading that?
Well, it would have to be, yeah, and Brett's still on. I just don't see him. He's hiding.
Yeah, he's got his mic back open again.
Yeah. Hey, Brett Farrell. I was hiding too because I was working on some other stuff when you guys were talking. Well, I think it's going to have to be specific, and you're going to have to basically prove that you were really doing something for COVID mitigation. I mean, obviously the health department is. Brett was. Obviously he's been hanging out with me a lot the last several months, the poor guy. I feel bad for him. But as far as mental health or anything else, you're going to have to point blank. I mean, just because your job title is, mental health or sheriff or public safety, you're going to have to prove that that's really what you were doing.
Right. That's why you need the receipts or documentation to go along with that claim. So,
right. Brett and I talked the other day, and I know you talked with us too, but and Chauncey was with us, but we don't have a lot of guidance with this document either. I mean, we got basically what you guys got. And so then we're like trying to figure it out. So Brett, go ahead. I don't want to speak out of turn.
No, I mean, my case for, I'm a little different because I work for commission. I don't work,
You're not a direct county employee.
And also I, part of my salary is paid for by a FEMA grant anyway, so I don't think that would include me in any of that.
Okay.
Right, but just to answer the question about anybody else, I mean, like, you got to have specific stuff. If you, just because you're a sheriff's deputy doesn't mean you're working on COVID mitigation.
Right, they would have documentation, I would hope, for when they had to, call people in to, if they had someone off of work, that might have been quarantining, or if someone has an isolation. I don't know how that would work, and I'm sure they're not going to have a lot of that paperwork, and I don't think the sheriff's office probably has too much cost wrapped up in personnel.
Right.
Oh, it's gonna be things like personal protective equipment, receipts for things like that.
The stuff that they purchased for the law center, including thermometers and stuff like that, their masks, some of their masks came from me, which just came through the state stockpile. So, but yes, the other stuff that they would have records of that, what they bought specifically, mainly for the jail employees and what they did back there to keep them safe.
Yeah, that was what was coming to my mind, is what mitigation that they put into place back in the jail itself and with its jailers because of COVID.
Yeah, it's got PPE listed, sanitizing products, testing equipment and supplies, ventilators. We don't have to worry about that for us. Other necessary COVID-19 medical supplies and equipment, isolation and quarantine sites. So yeah, and I'm sure it depends. We all know how anything basically is for mitigation, like your plexiglass, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, yep. But for any of us to get any money, you guys have to pass a resolution, and we had that conversation about that the other day. So I think I know it's on the agenda for tonight's meeting. I'm pretty sure it's on the agenda for tonight's meeting at the city council meeting. I haven't looked at that agenda, but
it's on it.
Okay. The resolution that we have is resolution for Iowa COVID-19 Local Government Relief Fund. Be it resolved by the Jefferson County Board of Supervisors that, in accordance with rules governing the Iowa COVID-19 Local Government Relief Fund, that the government of Jefferson County and its subsidiary public offices shall follow all state and federal guidance regulating how any funding dispersed pursuant to the relief fund is spent. And in the event funding dispersed is shown to have been spent outside of the guidance provided, Jefferson County assumes responsibility for repayment of funding as well as payment of the applicable penalties and interest thereon. So do I have a motion to pass this resolution? Okay, Dee Sandquist has made the motion. Lee Dimmitt has seconded it. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Resolution passes.
Thank you, Melissa. Thanks, Chauncey. Thanks, everybody, for your help.
Chris?
Yo.
Chris.
Don't leave just yet. I have a question to ask you.
Okay.
Or not so much a question, just an information update. And I don't know if Chauncey, I think Pat's still on there. There is, I can't go into a lot of detail, but I just want you to know that we are working to make sure that we secure the Lucas devices during the transition. And also the radios. And because I know that those Lucas devices actually belong to public health. And my question is, do they have to come back to you before we transfer them to the new operator?
No, Lee, that's fine. They can make the transition from one contracted service to the other. That's totally fine.
Okay, that's what I needed to know. Thank you.
I appreciate you following up with that and keeping me in the loop. I think that's very important. So I appreciate your work on that. Thanks a lot.
All right, let's move on to make committee reports. I met with the safety committee earlier last week, and we are now resuming our monthly safety committee meetings with our insurers, ICAP and IMWCA, the workmen's compensation insurance people. We've been doing pretty good with that. Our mod rates have went down, but we are looking at some increases in that coming up from the accident that we had with our building superintendent and his time off work for approximately 3 months because of an injury on the job. We also, I don't know, you guys can jump in with me, but we also discussed, again, this resolution that we just passed and the necessity of it, and making sure that all departments know that they need to get their receipts turned in so that we can get some reimbursement on this type of funding. Is there anything else, Chris, that you think we need to talk about?
No, I'm halfway through typing the minutes.
Yay!
So hopefully I'll get those sent out, and then everybody can get on the agenda. I know Brett and I were discussing the fire extinguisher training. I'm just glad that we're getting back on track. It's hard to get back in track when you've been off track for a little bit, but I think it's important. So we'll get there. We'll get there. So thanks for your participation. So
you're welcome. Okay, Lee, did you have any committees?
No, I did not. So week in some regards. We do anticipate probably receiving hopefully our new ambulances the week of the 17th, so that we'll have them in place and ready to go in the event that there is a change in status before the end of the contract.
Okay. We know that Dee was on vacation this last week, so I don't believe she has any committee reports other than the committee of grandkids.
Actually, I do have a couple.
Okay.
Workforce development is moving along finally, and we're looking for especially business people who are interested in being on our new area local workforce development board. And so applications, I have those. We need 51% of the new board has to be businesses. So that's a change from previously. We have a fiscal agent in place now, which is the Wapello County auditor. And there's a staff person who has been hired for our new Southern Iowa area, which now adds the current area 15, or the Indian Hills area as we were, and then, which I guess was 10, and then area 6 previously, which is 4 counties up in central Iowa. FYI, I have a SEAL meeting on Wednesday afternoon, and on the agenda is to nominate Jack Seward, who's a Washington County supervisor, to the ICAP board.
Okay. All right, thank you, Dee. Next on our agenda is any public comments. I know we have Josh Larrabee on with us. I don't know if Josh has any public comments as far as the economic development that's been going on here in the county. There isn't any public that's in the office with us here today, so I don't see that we have any comments coming in. So we'll move on then to allow claims and approve reports. I have a motion from Dimmitt, a second from Sandquist. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries to allow the claims and approve reports. We also have discuss and consider nuisance properties.
We sent out 2 new notices this week, or this last week, excuse me. And just just going through the normal process of the 30 days to cure and that sort of thing. We did hear from one of the respondents. The individual was, I don't think we're on the Christmas card list any longer, but it is what it is. And let's see, received a complaint on the second property and viewed the second property, and so asked Bruce to send out the request to mitigate that nuisance. So we've got 2 more out there, and Pat's working on some questions that Bruce and I had regarding properties that have already, I guess I'd say for lack of a better word, been adjudicated, or at least arrangements made through the attorney's office. That's all I have.
I'm going to add to that, Lee.
Okay.
We're working through that here in my office a little bit. We've had a handful of cases where we have had the folks go through the court process and have ended up with the civil penalty. It's essentially a fine, but legally I use the word fine for criminal cases, and we have a civil case. So the civil penalty, some are paying on that in installments, some are not, but in any regard, they essentially are not making any progress on cleaning up the property, which is the goal of the nuisance ordinance. So the question is, hey, what do we do? The ordinance allows us to cite again, allows for the penalty to be higher the second go around. But I mean, at least in 2 of these, the person ignored the notice and didn't even come to court, and judgment entered without them ever even being there, engaged in no conversation, and have not been making any payments. So, I mean, we can keep piling fines or penalties on, but, if they're not paying it, number 1, that doesn't do us anything. And number 2, if they're not cleaning it up, that doesn't meet the ultimate goal. So we're continuing to kind of look at what the options are moving forward on that. I have been talking to Mike a little bit about the guardianship process, or excuse me, the garnishment process, to see if, being proactive and trying to collect on that current judgment might, get people to move a little bit. I'm not sure that is an effective way to do it. I'm trying to get some sort of a cost analysis and get some things in writing for you guys to take a look at, because you are the client. So, unlike some of these citations, I think if we filed a garnishment, there are filing fees and there are some costs and things up front that the client has to pay. So we're going to work through that and get you some information and give some recommendation. And of course, the option is always available to, simply clean up the property and assess the cost. So, we're having some success. I sent you that kind of list of how things have gone. There have been some success. I'll tell you, there is a 3rd case that was filed. I've had 16 cases filed so far, and now we've had 3 that have effectively and appropriately cleaned up the property and had the cases closed. So, that's not a great percentage, but it's, it's 3 properties that have been successful. So, and there are some that are still working through the process, and then there are others, like we talked about, that we have to, come up with, what's the next strategy. So we've had a lot of conversation about that in our office, and at some point we're going to bring a pile of information to you guys so that you can make the decision as the client and tell us how you want to proceed.
So, question for you, Pat. A lot of these nuisance properties, there's some right of way involved, and if the nuisance property owners aren't cleaning up their property, they don't seem to be too interested in cleaning up the right of way portion of their nuisance either. Fences is one situation we have, which might not be the nuisance part, but I know of at least one nuisance property where they have a fence out in the right of way too. And I told them to take a fence down, and they did that once, and then they put up other fences. So how do I mean, if I make the letter and I'll send a copy to you saying that if they don't remove the fence or the vehicle or whatever's in the way, that we'll remove it, well, how do I go about removing it? Do I just shove it over on their property? Or have to haul it away and put it in the junkyard and bill them for it? Or what are my options?
Send me that letter and I'll see if there's any case law or any particular guidance on that, and I'll get that to you in writing as well.
Yeah, because one property we got, been watching it for a long time. They're the ones that moved the fence off once when I met there with them. So I didn't have to write a letter then, but now they've got a fence, maybe 2 fences back on there. And they've always had the vehicle that looks to me like it's at least partially on the right of way. And I mean, they took one vehicle off, but this other one, they haven't moved. So that'll probably be the first letter you'll get from me about what they're doing. And maybe maybe we can figure out from that one how to take care of all these others.
All right. Well, go ahead, Pat.
I just said that sounds good. I'll look for it.
Okay.
Okay. All right. That concludes our agenda. That concludes our meeting today. I would take a motion to adjourn. Moved by Dimmitt, second by Sandquist. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you, everyone, for joining in on the meeting today with us of the Jefferson County Board of Supervisors.